looking everywhere, that's how the story goes. Grab your key.
Previously in Eldritch Hollow, passion and terror entwined beneath storm-torn skies. The villagers, Thomas, Eliza, Sophia, Tessa, Mira, Lila, William, Edmund, and Henry, face not only the dead rising from ancient barrows, but their own forbidden desires that awakened the curse itself. The chalice, born of Elias's hunger for eternal life, fed on sin, turning love to poison and touch to damnation. By Chapter 6, secrets bled into the open. Tessa's healing herbs had brewed the very plague she sought to cure. And Elias returned from the grave with the chalice in hand, summoning his dark congregation. But the true horror is only beginning. In the next chapters, the survivors will descend into the heart of the curse, a sanctum where passion becomes sacrifice and every kiss could summon the dead. The battle for their souls will test not only faith and courage, but the fragile line between love and corruption. The storm has only just begun.
From the graveyards to the streets, hear the whispers low. Every story's a thrill, come and let your courage show.
Chapter 7, The Barrow's Call. The dying sun sank behind Eldritch Hollow, staining the mist in crimson hues, a sky weeping for what was about to unfold. Every heart in Tessa's cottage beat with one grim purpose. The time for fear had passed. The cursed chalice would be shattered, or they would all become part of its legend. Love, sin, and loyalty would be tested beneath the ancient mounds, where the dead no longer slept. Twilight deepened, wrapping the hollow in a veil of damp sorrow. The storm had eased, but its ghost still whispered through the trees as the survivors prepared for their march toward the barrows. The earth itself seemed to breathe, pulsing faintly with the curse that had gripped their world. Thomas led the way, hammer slung over his shoulder, Eliza's hand steady in his. "We end this," he vowed, his voice cutting through the chill. Eliza's eyes gleamed with fierce devotion, her dagger glinting against her thigh like a lover's promise. "Then let's make it count," she said softly, pressing her lips to his in a vow stronger than steel. William followed close behind, pitchfork gleaming in the dusk. Mira clung to his arm, a lavender sachet tied around his wrist, a charm of hope in a land of death. "The chalice must fall," she whispered. He nodded, determination burning in his gaze, their fingers entwined as if holding dawn itself at bay. Edmund gripped his makeshift weapon, the baker's paddle reinforced with iron, Lila's red ribbon tied to it like a banner of defiance. "For our dances?" he murmured, pulling her near for a fleeting moment of comfort. Her laughter, soft and trembling, was the last echo of innocence in a world unraveling. Henry walked with Sophia, burdened by faith and forbidden knowledge. In one hand he carried the cross, in the other, her ancient tome. "Elias defiled the rites," he muttered, eyes shadowed by guilt. Sophia brushed against him, her voice low and calm. "Then we rewrite them together." Their closeness sparked a fragile courage, their bond a shield against despair. Behind them, Tessa staggered beneath the weight of her basket. Vials, herbs, hope distilled in glass. Pip remained behind under watch, his fevered body trembling on the edge of death. "The draught holds," she whispered, though her own limbs trembled with growing weakness. Her reflection in a puddle showed it, the faint darkness threading through her veins. The barrows rose ahead, vast and brooding, their mounds like the breasts of ancient giants. Mist wound around them in ghostly ribbons, carrying whispers of the long dead. As they advanced, the undead emerged from the gloom. Farmers, mothers, children, all hollow-eyed and unrecognizable. Thomas struck first, his hammer falling silent but true. William's pitchfork followed, cutting through decay. Eliza's dagger flashed, her heart splintering as she recognized the face she felled. "He once loved me," she murmured. Thomas held her close, the two trembling in a silence that spoke more than words. At the heart of the barrows, Father Elias awaited, half man, half shadow, the chalice pulsing in his grasp. His voice carried across the hollow like a hymn of corruption. "Join us, kin," he beckoned, eyes fixed on Henry. The air grew heavy with rot and power as the dead surrounded them, moans weaving into a ghastly chorus. Sophia's gasp broke the tension. "The runes, they're not a curse," she realized, eyes wide with revelation. "They're a key." Elias smiled, a cruel triumph. "Then open the door, my child." In that instant, Tessa stumbled, her face pale, veins darkening visibly. Lila's sob pierced the air. "It was me," she confessed, clutching her festering arm. "I was bitten. I hid it. The air turned cold as truth and betrayal collided. Henry lunged for the chalice, but Elias met him with unnatural strength, forcing the silver rim to his lips. The priest's laughter echoed as Henry convulsed. Holy man and sinner united in damnation. Mira screamed. Eliza swung her blade in rage. The others faltered as lightning split the sky. And in the chaos, the truth finally bled through Elias's laughter. The curse was never born of blood. It was born of desire. The barrows groaned, the dead stirred, and the hollow itself seemed to awaken. Their sins had called, and now the earth answered. Chapter 8. Blood Libations. The night trembled with fury and fate. The barrows, ancient and vengeful, seemed to breathe as if the earth itself demanded payment for centuries of silence. The survivors stood on sacred, tainted ground, their love, fear, and sins converging beneath a storm of blood and revelation. Every heartbeat, every breath, every touch carried weight. For in Eldridge Hollow, passion had become both weapon and curse. Chaos erupted within the burial mounds, torchlight flickering like dying constellations. Elias stood at the center of it all, his face alight with unholy triumph, the chalice in his grasp overflowing with blood that pulsed like living flame. Henry convulsed at his feet, veins blackening beneath his skin, his once priestly cries warping into guttural snarls that chilled the soul. Sophia lunged at him, her tome raised high as if scripture could defy damnation. Elias struck her aside with inhuman strength, sending her tumbling into a tangle of brambles that tore at her gown and skin. The night air kissed her wounds cold, and still she rose, determination gleaming in her tear-streaked eyes. Tessa's cry split the darkness. Enough! She hurled a vial into the fray, her potion exploding in a burst of smoke and bitter scent. The risen shrieked, clawing at the air, their hollow eyes blinded by her craft. Thomas surged forward with his hammer, ready to strike, but Eliza caught his arm, her nails digging deep into his skin. "Wait," she urged, breathless, her body pressed close. Sophia's runes, they mean something. Her words burned through the smoke, a spark of reason amid the rage. William's pitchfork found its mark, spearing one of the undead. Behind him, Mira clung to his waist, her trembling hands steadying his aim. "Fight for us," she pleaded, her lips brushing his neck, a fleeting whisper of warmth in the storm's cold chaos. Lila fought her own battle, her bitten arm now a roadmap of corruption, veins spreading dark and fast. Edmund tore his ribbon from his weapon, binding her wound as if the act could defy fate. "You're not leaving me," he said fiercely, eyes shining with grief and devotion. Their embrace was desperate, their love forged in terror, a final dance against the dying night. As the smoke cleared, Tessa stepped forward, voice breaking. "It was me," she confessed. "I saw Elias brew the wine with my herbs. I thought it was for healing." The truth landed heavy, every word peeling back the layers of deceit and innocence. The curse had been born not from malice, but from yearning, a healer's search for power gone astray. Henry, now half-turned, lunged for Sophia with eyes that once adored her. She ducked, chanting from her tome even as his touch grazed her arm, a haunting echo of tenderness turned monstrous. The spell flared, light cutting through shadow, halting him just long enough for Thomas's hammer to strike. Elias laughed, retreating deeper into the barrows. "Drink, temptress," he mocked, thrusting the chalice toward Lila. "Your sins called me here." Edmund blocked the blow, shattering the chalice against his weapon. Blood and sacred wine sprayed across the stones, hissing like acid. The risen faltered, howls torn from their rotting throats as power drained from them like sand through glass. But victory was fleeting. The priest vanished into the tunnels, clutching a shard that pulsed with the same crimson light. Behind them, Henry collapsed, barely breathing, his teeth bloodied from his attack on Sophia. The wound on her shoulder glowed faintly, her fate uncertain. They carried him back through the rain, every step heavy with dread. Pip's fever had broken, but the look in his eyes spoke of truths yet to surface. "It's not over," he whispered. "The chalice still lives." As the group huddled once more in Tessa's cottage, exhaustion met forbidden comfort. Eliza found Thomas's arms again by the fire. Mira leaned into William's warmth, and Lila wept against Edmund's chest. Desire lingered, an echo of life defying death, but beneath it, the air grew colder. Tessa's reflection in the window betrayed her secret, veins darkening, pulsing faintly beneath her skin. The healer's gift was turning against her, and the line between savior and cursed was vanishing. Beyond the walls, the undead stirred once more, drawn by blood, sin, and sorrow, the unholy libation that would never cease to flow. Chapter 9. Fractured Vows. Darkness gives way to dawn, but not to peace. Love, once their salvation, now fractures under the weight of betrayal and blood. Inside the trembling cottage, passion and peril entwine as vows are tested, and the line between desire and damnation blurs forever. The cottage groaned under siege, shutters rattling like bones in a storm. Henry's transformation steadied with morning light, his body chained to the pallet, his gaze fixed on Sophia. Eyes once tender, now burning with hunger. "Free me," he rasped, voice trembling between prayer and temptation. She hesitated, gown hastily mended, trembling as her fingers traced the man he once was. "I can't," she breathed, yet her lips brushed his in one final, forbidden touch, love's farewell on the edge of ruin. Eliza and Thomas stood guard, bodies pressed back to back, breath sinking in resolve. "If he turns fully, I'll end it," she whispered, steel glinting in her eyes. Thomas turned to her, his palm cupping her cheek. "Then we fight together." Their lips met, fierce, desperate, a promise sealed not by words, but by fire born of fear and devotion. Mira tended to William's wounded arm, the bandage made from her torn petticoat. Her hands lingered too long, trembling as his fingers caught hers. "You've healed worse," he said, eyes soft, pulling her close. Theirs was a union of souls scarred by death, the pot clinging to life in quiet defiance as chaos howled beyond the walls. Lila, pale and broken, wept into Edmund's chest. Her arm was gone, mercy's price for survival, yet he held her as though she were untouched. "You're whole to me," he whispered, his hand resting gently against her heart. Pain and love merged, two halves seeking one heartbeat in the storm. Tessa's confession cut through the stillness. "Elias promised eternal bloom," she said, voice breaking. "But the herbs, my herbs, they birthed this curse." Guilt spread like poison, darkening her veins. Still, she worked, brewing a desperate antidote, testing it on Henry. His thrashing slowed, his eyes clearing for a fleeting second. "It works," he gasped. But the cost. Outside, the dead stirred again. The chalice's shards pulsed beneath the earth, summoning kin from their graves. Pip, clutching a map taken from Elias's robes, revealed the next horror, a sanctum where the chalice would be reborn whole. The cottage trembled as the horde breached the palisade. "To the church!" William shouted. They fled, hearts divided, love tested. Henry's final vow to Sophia echoed like prophecy. "If I fall, strike true." Yet even as they ran, Tessa stumbled, body convulsing, her skin blackened, her eyes hollowed. "Run," she gasped, before the healer's form twisted into what she'd once tried to cure. The woman who gave life now carried death's touch, proof that even love's purest vow could shatter in the dark. Chapter 10. Sanctum of the Damned. Faith becomes the final battleground as love, lust, and sin collide beneath the ruins of salvation. Inside a cursed church where every echo carries a prayer or a scream, the survivors descend into the heart of darkness, to face the man who made monsters of them all. The church loomed above them like judgment carved in stone, its bell tower silent, its cross fractured. Inside, pews were dragged into barricades, incense battling the stench of rot. Outside, the dead hammered the doors. Among Tessa's voice rose, no longer tender, but shrill and ravenous. The healer who once mended life now begged to break it. Sophia clutched the map in trembling hands, leading the group toward the altar. Henry followed, chained but lucid, the potion dulling his hunger for now. "The sanctum, beneath the altar," she whispered, pain cutting her breath short as the infection crept up her arm. Henry caught her, his chains clinking. "Fight it with me," he said, pressing his lips to hers, a kiss torn between salvation and farewell. In the nave, Eliza and Thomas moved through the shadows, their eyes fierce with purpose. "Remember our first dance?" she asked, voice low. He smiled through the fear. "This is our last." Their embrace burned like a confession whispered in sin, two hearts beating against the drums of death. Mira and William braced the altar doors, hands brushing in wordless comfort. "We'll hold the line," he said. She nodded, her breath quick. "Together." His lips brushed her temple, a promise that even if the world ended, love had been real. Lila, one arm gone but spirit unbroken, worked beside Edmund, sharpening makeshift weapons. "Aim for the head," she muttered. He looked at her, eyes full of grief and pride. "I'll protect you." Her faint smile was brave and broken all at once. Then Pip called from the stairwell. "Here, It leads down. They descended into the crypt, torches flickering over walls etched with glowing runes. The air grew colder, fouler, heavy with decay. At the heart of the chamber stood the chalice, reforming itself, shards fusing with unholy light. And before it, Elias waited, young again, power radiating from him like fire. "Welcome, sinners," he said, spreading his arms. "Your loves feed the flame." The battle ignited in fury. Thomas's hammer cracked skulls. Eliza's blade sang through the dark. William's pitchfork struck true. Mira's sling whistled. Edmund swung like a madman while Lila shouted orders. Henry tore free of his chains, tackling Elias, the apprentice meeting his damned master in a storm of blood and fury. Sophia chanted from the tome, her voice trembling. "In blood unbound, return to dust." But her wound pulsed, veins blackening, her body shaking under the strain. Elias sneered, blood bubbling from his lips. "Tessa poured first," he hissed. "For me." Her heart froze. The truth shattered her. The healer's love, pure, desperate, had birthed the curse itself. With a roar, Henry drove the chalice's shard into Elias's chest. The light flared, the air split, the master dissolved into ash. But as silence fell, faint moans echoed from above. The dead still moved. The survivors held each other, breathless and bloodstained. Their love, once salvation, now the last thread binding them to humanity. Yet as Sophia's veins darkened to black, eyes glazing with the same hunger she'd fought to destroy, the question rose like smoke. Had evil truly died, or merely changed its vessel? Chapter 11. Echoes of the Risen. When love becomes the final tether between life and death, every heartbeat turns into a weapon. In the shattered sanctum where passion once defied fear, the survivors face a cruel truth. Their bonds, their very feelings, are what keep the curse alive. Ash drifted through the sanctum like the breath of the grave, glowing faintly where the chalice's shards smoldered. The moans above deepened, a relentless tide pressing against the church walls. Henry staggered, his breath ragged, the potion's strength fading. His eyes clouded pale as he reached for Sophia, her wound darkening to match his. "We end together," he whispered. Their embrace was desperate and tender, a final prayer whispered through tears. Theirs was a love too strong to die quietly. Eliza and Thomas fought up the stairs, blades glinting through dust and shadow. "Not yet," she growled, parrying a blow. Thomas swung beside her, their movements perfect in rhythm, driven by trust. Between clashes, a fleeting glance, a promise to stand, fall, and burn together. Mira and William held the doorway, every breath a battle. "For our tomorrow," she cried, loosing a slingstone that split bone. His pitchfork struck true, and for one heartbeat, the horror stilled. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, the world narrowing to two hearts still daring to hope. Across the nave, Lila steadied Edmund with her remaining hand. "Keep your aim," she urged, her voice shaking but fierce. He obeyed, every strike echoing her courage. Blood streaked his face, yet he smiled. "We'll dance again." Her laugh cracked through fear, fragile but real. Then Pip fell, the youngest, brave and bright, dragged down by the jaws of his own kin. In his grasp, the map still burned faintly. Sophia froze, realization striking like lightning. "It's not the dead, it's us!" She gasped. "The curse feeds on what we refuse to let go." Henry convulsed, his humanity fading in a final flash of clarity. "Do it," he pleaded, "before I turn." Sophia's cry broke the silence, her dagger plunging home. His body fell limp against her, and the horde faltered, as if love's ending dimmed the curse itself. But from below, Elias's echo rippled through the earth. Bonds reform the chalice. The truth was worse than the lie. Every attachment reforged what they destroyed. As dawn broke, the survivors stumbled into the square, the mist thinning into gold. Tessa's form led the dead, eyes locked on Lila. Edmund moved without thought, shielding her with his body. Striking once, Tessa fell. Her final breath was soft as ash. "Forgive my desire." The mystery's heart finally bared itself. Elias's seduction of Tessa had been the spark, but it was the village, their love, their longing that had kept the fire burning. Each secret touch, each whispered vow had fed the chalice drop by drop. As the sun rose higher, the moans faded. The risen collapsed, their master's will starved at last. Silence reigned where passion had once ruled. Yet even in victory, the survivors stood hollow-eyed, their hearts fractured but beating still. For in the quiet between breaths, a single truth lingered. Love had saved them, but it had nearly ended the world. Chapter 12. Dawn's Fragile Bloom. After a night of unholy terror, when blood and desire had blurred into one long scream, dawn came. Soft, golden, and trembling. The survivors stood among the ashes of their sins and salvation, where love had both destroyed and redeemed them. But even as light kissed the hollow's ruins, a shadow of mystery lingered in the morning air. Had the curse truly ended, or was it only sleeping beneath the soil, waiting for love to bloom again? Sunrise gilded Eldridge Hollow's remains, every broken beam and blackened stone glinting like a relic. The risen were gone, their ashes strewn in silent drifts across the square. The chalice lay shattered, its shards dull and lifeless in the mud. What had once been born of Elias's greed and the village's hidden passions now rested, undone by the very love that had sustained it. Thomas gathered Eliza from the rubble, her body weary but whole, eyes reflecting both grief and defiance. "We danced through hell," he murmured, brushing the dirt from her cheek. She leaned into him, their breath mingling in a quiet moment of peace. No longer a desperate flame, but the warmth of two hearts that had survived the dark together. William found Mira kneeling by the fountain, her hands raw, her gaze turned toward the dawn. "It's over," he said, lifting her gently. She smiled faintly, the fear gone from her eyes. "Then we begin again." His fingers brushed her face, a touch not of hunger, but of homecoming. Edmund knelt beside Lila, binding her wound with clean linen. Her laugh, small, shaky, but real, broke the tension that had gripped them for days. "Guess I'll have to lead our next dance one-handed." He chuckled, kissing her brow. "You've always led." Around them, the scent of smoke mingled with earth, the air heavy but clean. Sophia stood apart, her book clasped to her chest. The draught had spared her, barely. Henry's memory lingered like a ghost behind her eyes. "Love," she whispered, "the truest curse of all." Yet even she joined the circle that gathered in the square, her hand linking with Eliza's, Thomas's, and finally Mira's. Not bonds of sin, but threads of survival. Fragile, human, and real. The wind stirred softly, scattering the last ashes of Tessa and young Pip. Their remains shimmered briefly before fading, as though forgiven by dawn itself. Around the survivors, the hollow began to breathe again. Birds sang timidly in the rafters of half-burned homes. The forge, cold for days, sparked back to life. Days turned to weeks. The village rebuilt with trembling hope. Thomas's hammer rang bright against new iron, Eliza's laughter echoing as she passed him bread. William plowed fields under the open sky, Mira's song drifting across furrows like prayer. Edmund kneaded dough beside Lila, her teasing grin restored. Sophia wrote by candlelight, her ink recording the tale of sin and redemption that had nearly undone them all. Desire, once their ruin, softened into something tender. Stolen glances, lingering touches, warmth rather than hunger. The hollow had changed, and so had they. When the harvest moon rose weeks later, its silver glow washed over rebuilt hearths and quiet hearts. Yet far beyond the fields, deep in the woods, a single sound broke the stillness. A faint, hollow whisper, like breath drawn through bone. The story of Eldridge Hollow was not over. It had only learned to wait. Epilogue. Echoes of the Risen. Dawn bathed Eldridge Hollow in gold, the fields breathing life again. But beneath the soil, faint heartbeats lingered, soft, rhythmic, waiting. Thomas and Eliza rebuilt the forge, laughter echoing where screams once dwelled. Mira's song carried across the meadows, while Lila danced one-armed under the harvest moon. Sophia wrote their tale by candlelight, her quill trembling with truth and fear. For some nights, when the wind turns warm and the air tastes of memory, whispers rise from the earth. Desire never truly dies. The chalice lies buried deep, its shards pulsing faintly with light, feeding on the embers of forbidden love. Eldridge Hollow survives, but the curse sleeps, not dies. And someday, when passion burns too brightly again, the Risen will answer. Love was their salvation, and their doom.
These stories old, adventure never grows old. Welcome to the zombie story zone.